Welcome back to True Ghost Vault. Some stories are born from fear, others are carved into the dirt with fingernails whispered across bunks, passed from trembling lips around dying campfires. Tonight we return to the woods, where the air still smells of pine and something older, where counselors vanish between head counts, where bells are rung that were never meant to be touched, where games don't end when someone's found, because sometimes it's something else that's doing the seeking. You've heard the stories, you've seen the warnings, but these 5 tales weren't meant to be told. They were meant to be buried. Stories of the phone that surfaced with footage from the lost, of the night hike that didn't return with everyone, of the bell that still tolls beneath the earth, of the game that let in an intruder, and of the whistle code that was never meant for humans. So settle in, dim the lights, because once you hear these stories, you'll never hear the woods the same way again. Story 1. The Counselor. Vanished during the night hike, we still hear him calling. I remember the moment the sun dipped behind the pine ridge. The last orange streak flickered across the ridge, bleeding into night. We gathered at the trailhead, the counselors flicking on headlamps with a sharp click. Everyone joked. Voices carried easily in the cooling air. But someone, our counselor Gavin, paused, his eyes empty, scanning the tree line as if sensing something we could not. That pause planted the seed of dread. Gavin led us on a winding path through the forest. His calm voice narrated the night sounds. A distant owl, leaves rustling. How he described them felt rehearsed, as though he expected us to find comfort in his tone. Around us, the forest closed in, branches reaching above silhouettes, wavering in the beam of each light. It felt like the woods were listening, even breathing. Halfway through, he announced a break. We circled around him. He unzipped a small pack, offered granola bars. He asked each of us how we were feeling. One camper whispered that the silence felt too thick. Her voice trembled. He smiled and said, "That's the forest," and began humming softly. Not a camp tune, but something odd, off-key, repetitive. The notes slid into the darkness. A lullaby that twisted logic. Something narrowed my chest. I looked at his face, calm but hollow. We moved again. The path vanished, lost it in whip-crack trails. Gavin's compass flickered. He said, "We'll keep going," but I noticed his hand shake. Sweat beaded at his brow. The others murmured. A few began to lag, and then he called a halt. He gazed around at the blackness beyond our headlamps. "Stick close," he said. "The path's just ahead." That was the last dozen words we heard from him. A sharp crack, something off-trail, a soft and unmistakable call. His own voice calling our names, but he wasn't there. It echoed from a quarter-mile back, deeper in the woods, faint. My heart lodged in my throat. He called again, closer now. I spun toward my left headlamp beam, cutting through moss and bark. "Nothing but dark." "Gavin," I whispered. We all froze. We heard his voice calling again, clearer, sadder, pleading. It came from behind, from ahead, from all around, a hollow echo that made the hair on my neck stand on end. We called back. No reply, just a whisper come to me. I felt my breath catch, panic flash through my limbs. Some kids began to cry. Someone tugged on my sleeve. Our counselor had disappeared. The air shifted. We fumbled for rational thought. The forest felt alive. Each footstep seemed swallowed by damp earth. Headlamps bobbed. Nobody spoke. We should have stayed together. I realized that. Too late. Alone, 3 of us chased a beam of light we thought was coming from Gavin's flashlight, but turned out to be an illusion. A feather-bare flicker in the distance that dissolved when we approached. The group fractured. Fear pried us apart. Gavin's calls continued, soft at first, then urgent. He whispered, "Help me." I felt it in my bones. It wasn't him. Something wore his voice like a mask. We tried retracing the trail. We marked broken pine needles, pressed leaves, but the forest bent, folding us inward. Minutes turned into hours. My legs ached, breath-ragged throat sore from shouting his name. The sound design in my mind, the echoes of his voice bouncing off invisible walls, the crunch of my boots muffled by moss, my own heartbeat hammered in my ears. Silence crashed between the calls until, without warning, the forest erupted in a single scream. Not human, but ragged. A spine-shaking sound that clawed into our nerves. It echoed and vanished. The headlamp beams shook. 3 of us backed into each other trembling. No counselor, no creature, just that echo pulsing in the emptiness. I caught sight of one camper, Mia, crumpled beside a large pine trunk, shaking in full sobs. She claimed she'd seen him, Gavin, just beyond the tree. Its branches moving, unnatural shapes twisting in human form. She said his face was twisted, eyes empty. He beckoned her deeper. Then he vanished. No one believed her until I felt it, an itch behind my eyes, a whisper in the wind follow. At some point, we formed another cluster and forced ourselves onward. Headlamps pooled light on the path, revealing roots that looked like gnarled fingers, tree trunks scorched black. We stumbled into a clearing, a dried patch of earth. No tracks, no sign of campsite. Our only orientation marked the moon overhead, low and pale. That was when Gavin's voice came again, but from directly beneath our feet. A faint, muffled calling from the ground. It made us step back in instinct, fear freezing us. The voice sounded distant and near, at once layered, urgent, childlike pleading. "Come here." I dropped something. We didn't dare dig. We bolted not toward camp, but away, guided by panic, not logic. We ran until muscles burned, until the forest thinned, until dawn's gray began slicing through dense foliage. We emerged, everyone alive, but Gavin was gone. There was no sign of him. Our emails to Camp HQ, the search parties, the dogs, nothing. The forest we hiked through seemed to vanish in maps. It simply didn't exist on any official trail system. Camp administrators insisted it was a misdirection, a prank. Parents were placated with theories. But we know, we still hear him calling in the woods when we close our eyes, in the quiet ticking of a clock, in dreams. Months later, a recording surfaced, captured on Mia's camera. We listened together in horror. At 2:17 a.m. on the night of the hike, an audio track faintly captured a voice, soft trembling. "Cieli, come back. Help. Come to me." The voice wavered distant. Seconds later, a jarring impact. Silence. That voice, it sounded like Gavin, but wrong. Too slow. Too echoic. Like speaking from underwater. We still have the clip. We still listen. It doesn't help. It provokes something deeper. Grief, guilt, fear, and an itch that cannot be scratched. Every night I hear in my mind his final call. Come back. And I realize we didn't lose Gavin to distance or disappearance. We lost him to something that borrowed his form and never let go. Listen closely when the wind flatters the trees, when silence stretches too long. Because it might be him, or the thing that took him, calling your name. We never told the new campers what happened. The story became a scar the staff wore in silence. That summer they hired new counselors, fresh faces, clean slates. But the woods didn't forget. I returned to Pine Hollow the following year, not because I wanted to, but because something in me needed to. Needed answers. Needed to feel Gavin's voice in the dark again. Needed to know if I imagined it. The camp looked the same. That bland familiarity you expect from places frozen in time. The cabins, the canoes, the dining hall, with its sticky benches, and dull fluorescent lights. But the forest, something about it had changed. Or maybe I had. On the third night, they planned another night hike. Different leader, different trail. But I couldn't breathe when I heard the announcement. My chest tightened with the pressure that felt like drowning. I told myself I'd just walk at the back, observe, protect. Maybe I could stop it from happening again. We stepped into the woods after dusk. 20 campers, 2 counselors. Flashlights flickered. One boy dropped his. When it hit the dirt, the beam caught something between the trees, a flash of white. A shirt, a face. I blinked and it was gone. I told myself it was just a reflection. But it moved. The counselor, a woman named Lisa, made cheerful banter. She didn't see me constantly checking behind us. She didn't hear the shift in the wind that came just as we passed the fork in the trail. I recognized that spot. My feet knew it before my brain did. I whispered, "Stop." She didn't hear me, so I yelled it. "Stop!" The group froze. Headlamps turned on me. Some laughed nervously. Lisa asked what was wrong. But before I could speak, before I could explain, the wind carried a sound. It was faint, but I knew it instantly. Gavin's voice. "Hey, can you guys wait up?" It came from behind us. Clear, familiar, wrong. I turned. My flashlight scanned the path. No one there, just trees. "Hey," he called again. Closer, friendly. Exactly how he'd sound if he'd just lagged behind to tie his shoe. But he was gone. We all knew that. And yet one of the campers, a boy named Sean, started walking toward the voice. "Sean," I barked. "Don't." But he sounds hurt. Sean said, eyes glassy. The counselor stepped forward, hand on her radio. But the signal crackled and died. Nothing but static. Then we heard it again. Not Gavin this time. A child's voice. Crying. Calling for help. It echoed faintly from deeper in the woods, pulling us sideways off the trail. Voices layered on voices, each one a memory fragments of things said years ago. Campers long gone. Counselors who had quit. All speaking at once. Sean screamed. His flashlight hit the dirt again and rolled, casting spinning shadows across the trees. I ran to him, grabbed his hand. His skin was ice cold. "There's someone out there," he whispered. "They're watching us." We rushed back to camp. The path stretched impossibly long. The trail curled where it never had before. It took us nearly 3 hours to get back. No one spoke. We all felt it. When we reached the cabins, Lisa's nose was bleeding. She hadn't noticed. Just stared at the woods behind her as if something was still following. That night, none of us slept. Some claimed to hear someone knocking on the cabin doors in the dead of night. Others dreamed of Gavin standing at the edge of their bunks, face pale and melted eyes black and full of hunger. The next morning, the camp nurse found Sean sleepwalking toward the woods, barefoot, eyes closed, humming Gavin's song. We pulled him back. He screamed, cried that he had to follow the path, that he's waiting, that he's alone and cold and hungry. The nurse marked it as a psychological episode, recommended rest and observation. But I knew better. The woods had reached out again, testing, luring. I'd seen this pattern before, and it was escalating. That afternoon, I walked the old trail alone, against all sense. I needed to see the exact spot, needed to stand where Gavin had vanished. The trees felt tighter this time, more angled, their trunks bent inward like they were closing a secret. At the place we'd last seen him, I stopped. The air shifted, the insects went silent. My flashlight flickered, and then I heard it. A low croak, a word, drawn out like a breath caught in time. "Why?" Not a question, a lament. Then it came again. "Why didn't you?" The words melted into static, a sound that echoed beneath the bark of the trees like thousands of mouths whispering through soil. The forest beneath me felt hollow. I knelt, pressed my palm to the ground. and it was warm. The earth pulsed beneath my palm, not metaphorically, not with fear. Literally, it throbbed like a slow heartbeat, like something enormous sleeping just beneath the surface. I jerked my hand away and stumbled back, breath sharp in my throat. The trees around me creaked, not with wind, but with pressure, as if bowing inward toward a single point. I stood over the exact place Gavin had vanished. My boots sank slightly into the ground, too soft for a forest trail. Something about the soil was wrong, darker than it should be, rich like wet ash. And then I heard it again, his voice, faint but rising from below. "I'm here. You forgot me." The same cadence, the same worn, pleading tone. But what chilled me wasn't the voice, it was the certainty blooming in my mind. Unwanted and intrusive, that voice isn't calling for help. It's calling you closer. The same instinct that makes a body flinch from fire screamed in my nerves. I turned and ran. I didn't look back, didn't speak. I just tore through the underbrush branches, slashing at my arms, eyes stinging. I didn't stop until I burst out into the edge of Camp Lungs on Fire Legs jelly. I collapsed beside the archery shed, trying to catch my breath. Lisa found me there. She didn't ask what happened. She looked pale, two eyes heavy with the same knowing dread. She said 3 more campers heard him last night. They all described the same thing, a voice whispering from under their beds. We didn't sleep again. That night, I sat awake in the counselor's cabin, watching the woods. My flashlight rested on my knee. The room was quiet, except for the slow creaking breaths of the bunks around me. Then came the tap. 3 knocks, soft, deliberate, on the glass window by the door. I froze, turned slowly. No one moved in the bunks. No one else heard it. Another knock, a whisper just after, "You left me there." It wasn't just Gavin's voice now. It was distorted, stretched, thin, and papery, like something mimicking him, but getting the tone wrong. I held my breath, stepped slowly to the window, and shined my light outside. Nothing, no footprints, just fog pressing against the glass, like wet skin. The next morning, 2 more campers were gone, vanished without a trace. No note, no sound. Their beds neatly made, their clothes untouched. The forest had taken them. We knew it. Camp was shut down within 48 hours. Quietly. No police, no parents contacted until the children were found, an official line that would never be true. We signed silence waivers. We were told this is being handled. But the woods don't sign waivers. They just wait. I didn't leave with the buses. I couldn't. Something in me had unspooled. I wasn't the same person who had arrived weeks before. I felt thinner, worn out, frayed, like I'd left part of myself behind in those trees. And part of something else had come back with me. Back home, I tried to forget. I turned off every sound at night, slept with lights on. But the dream started within days. I was back on the trail. Gavin walked ahead of me, turning only when I called his name. But his face was blank, just skin stretched across bone. No eyes, no mouth. Yet somehow I could hear him smiling. And then he would say it, every time like a curse. "You brought it back." I stopped going outside. I taped black garbage bags over my windows. I unplugged the TV because once, just once, I saw static turn into a face. Just for a second. But I knew it was his. The thing wearing him. I started hearing knocks in the walls. Not rats. Rhythmic. Intentional. Sometimes paired with breathing. My phone rang once. No number. No sound. Just the low groan of trees swaying in the wind. The last straw was the mirror. I'd been brushing my teeth, routine autopilot. And I saw him. Not my reflection. Him. Standing in the bathroom behind me where no one else could stand. He leaned forward, and I swear to God he whispered directly into the mirror glass, "Dig." That night I went to the woods behind my childhood home. I brought a flashlight and a shovel. I didn't even question it. I dug until my palms bled, and I found it. Not bones, not a body. A box, wooden, old, bound in rotting rope. Inside a single item, Gavin's camp lanyard, soaked in something dark. Still wet, still warm. There was a note inside scribbled in red crayon, on aged paper, like a child's handwriting. He stays buried if you stay quiet. I dropped it. The air around me dropped 20 degrees. Something moved in the trees, a shape too tall, too thin. It didn't approach, just watched, waiting. I ran, but the dreams didn't stop. Gavin started calling again, not just in dreams, in real life. His voice on voicemail, in the hum of my car radio, once whispering from the inside of my closet. I moved cities, changed phones. I even saw a psychiatrist who told me I was experiencing dissociative grief trauma, gave me pills. But the pills don't stop him, because it isn't Gavin. It never was. It's the forest, and it's still calling. I stopped sleeping. Every creak in the house became a footstep. Every shadow, a figure standing too still. One night I heard Gavin's voice again, but this time it was coming from my hallway just beyond the bedroom door. Not from a dream, not from a phone, from the real world. I opened the door slowly. The hall was dark, silent. But at the end of it, where the light from the living room spilled across the floor, I saw it. Not Gavin. It wore his shape, yes, the same frame, the same mop of dark hair, the camp hoodie we all got at the end of the season. But its head hung at the wrong angle, too low, like it was listening with its shoulders. And when it turned, it had no face, just a blur, as if someone had smudged it out of reality. It didn't move, didn't speak, just watched or maybe waited. I slammed the door and locked it, sat with my back against the wood, breathing so loud I couldn't hear anything else for minutes. When I looked again, it was gone, but the smell remained. Damp soil, pine resin, and something older, sourer, like decay. I began researching anything I could find, not about Gavin, but about the forest, the land Pine Hollow was built on. And that's when I found it. Old maps, archived articles, yellowed pages from forgotten historical societies. The land had a name once, before settlers paved over it and renamed it for brochures and summer brochures. It was called Low Hollow, and the earliest records described it not as a place to live, but a place to bury. Not bodies, not exactly, but voices, spirits that couldn't be silenced, echoes that refused to fade. The elders warned, let the trees remember and the land forget. Do not dig, do not follow the voice beneath the moss. But someone must have broken that pact. I think Gavin did, maybe not on purpose. Maybe he just stepped in the wrong place, listened too closely, answered something that wasn't meant for him, and now it's using him, a vessel, a lure, to bring more in. Last week, I received a letter. No return address, just a single sheet of paper, folded perfectly. No handwriting, just printed words, centered. They're building a new trail through the old path. Pine Hollow reopens next summer. I stared at it for an hour. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. This thing, it doesn't just feed on us. It adapts, it waits. It uses the living to pull others closer. And I know what's going to happen. More children will walk into those woods. More voices will be heard. More names will be called. And one night, a flashlight will flicker. A counselor will pause. And someone will whisper behind them, using the voice of someone they trusted. I'm just ahead. Wait for me. I think I know how to stop it. Not for me, I'm too far gone. But maybe for them. I've packed my bag. I've written this down for someone, anyone to find. Not to warn, but to remember. Because that's what it wants most of all, to be remembered. Tonight I go back, not to find Gavin, to bury the voice. The forest greeted me like an old wound. No markers, no signs, Just the path I remembered revealed only under moonlight. I walked without a flashlight. I didn't need one. My feet remembered what my mind tried to forget. Each step felt like it belonged to someone else, as if I wasn't walking forward, but being pulled. The trees leaned bowed mournful. They knew why I'd come. At the fork in the trail, the air thinned. The wind stilled. And then a voice. Gavin's. From ahead. You came back. I didn't answer. I kept walking. Past the place where we'd last seen him. Past the roots that gnarled like reaching hands. Deeper until I reached the clearing. The ground was bare, just like before. Only this time, I brought something with me. A small iron box, sealed tight. Inside it, his lanyard, the paper note, a clipping of my own hair, and a recorder, playing back his voice, over and over. You left me. You left me. You left me. I knelt in the center of the clearing, dug with my hands until the soil turned warm, until I struck something solid. Not wood, not stone, something that pulsed like breath under skin. I placed the box inside, covered it, pressed the dirt down until my palms bled. Then I whispered the only words that came to me, not yours. And the forest screamed, not loud, not a roar, but a long, wet inhalation like something waking from sleep. The wind exploded outward, branches bent backward. I fell to my knees as the ground shook beneath me, and from the trees they came, faces, dozens, hundreds, pale and flickering, not solid, not spirit, echoes, memories, campers long gone, eyes wide, mouths agape like they were gasping for a name. Gavin stood at the center, or something wearing him, but his face had returned, not the blur, not the mask, just tired. He looked at me and mouthed two words, let go. I closed my eyes, and the wind stopped. I woke at sunrise, alone in the clearing. The air was still, the forest quiet, no voices, no whispers, just birds, breeze. Morning. I walked back to camp and found it the way I remembered it before everything went wrong. Just cabins empty and locked like they'd never been opened. The trailhead was sealed. The construction signs were gone. It was as if none of it had ever happened. Weeks have passed. I sleep again. No dreams, no knocks, no voice. And yet, sometimes just as I drift off, I feel it. A presence pressing just behind my thoughts. Not malevolent, not hungry, just waiting. Not for me, but for the next name. So I write this now as my final offering. A record, a warning, a truth. Because memory is the only thing that keeps it alive and the only thing that can bury it again. Let the trees remember. Let the land forget. Never answer a voice in the woods. Never trust a name you can't see. And if you hear him call, even now if you listen closely, you might hear it whisper your name. Story 2. We found a phone in the lake. It had videos from the missing counselor. They always told us not to swim past the rope. The lake was divided into zones, safe swim areas, canoe lanes, and the deeper parts off limits. Not because of depth or safety, they said, but because no one had mapped the bottom. Every year, at least one kid pushed it, swam under the buoys, got hauled back coughing and laughing, thinking it was just a game. But we all knew what it really was, a dare, a test, a quiet rebellion against the thing we weren't supposed to talk about. The counselor who vanished, her name was Emily. She was 24, a lifeguard, worked 3 summers straight. Everyone liked her. Calm voice, quick laugh. She played guitar at the campfire, remembered everyone's names. The kind of person you felt safer around, even if you didn't know why. Until that night, 2 summers ago, she'd gone out after lights out. Said she was just kayaking to the far side before bed. She never came back. They found the kayak on shore, paddle drifting beside it. No signs of struggle, No footprints, just water. Silence. Fog. No one ever saw her again, and no one ever drained the lake. Last summer, I worked maintenance at the same camp. Just a temp job before college. Fixing screens, patching trails, changing bulbs. It was boring, predictable, until mid-July when the drought hit. The lake dropped by almost 2 feet. We were raking out the shallow end of debris, pulling muck and weeds from the shoreline. I remember it clearly, how the water shimmered like oil, how everything smelled metallic, like pennies and mildew. And then I saw it. Something caught in the reeds, barely visible under the slick brown surface. At first I thought it was a fish, then maybe a small tackle box. But when I reached in, fingers sinking into cold sludge, I pulled out a phone. Black, slim, caked in algae and soft grit. Screen cracked, still in a thin, waterproof case. It buzzed in my hand. I nearly dropped it, but it vibrated again. Just once. I held it up. The case had a name etched in the back, half eroded by water. Just 5 letters. Emily. We didn't tell anyone right away. I say we because my friend Sam was there too. He saw me pull it out. His face went pale when he saw the name. We sat by the boathouse staring at the phone like it might explode. "It's dead," I whispered. He nodded. "It buzzed though, didn't it?" I shrugged. "Yeah. Once. It didn't make sense. 2 years underwater. It should have been ruined. But something about the seal, maybe the case, it had survived." We took it to the maintenance shed, plugged it into an old solar charger we used for radios. Nothing happened for an hour. Then the screen flickered and turned on. Only one app showed on the home screen. No passcode, no wallpaper, no messages. Just the camera roll. A folder labeled simply "late." Inside were 6 videos, all time-stamped the night she vanished, all unviewed. Sam looked at me, eyes wide. "We should take this to someone." I shook my head. "They'll bury it, like they buried her." He didn't argue. I tapped the first video, and everything I thought I understood about this camp broke open. The screen showed her face, Emily, alone in the kayak, breathing hard. It was nighttime. Only the small light on her headlamp illuminated the water around her. Her voice trembled. "If someone finds this, I'm sorry. I don't know why I came out here. I thought I saw something from shore." She turned the camera. Lake fog drifted across the surface like smoke. "I followed it," she whispered. "A light. Looked like a lantern. Old, like a fisherman's torch. I thought it was a prank." She went quiet. Paddle dipped. Water lapped gently. Then she said something that made my skin crawl. "I heard someone under the boat. Knocking." She pointed the camera down at the black water. Ripples. Nothing else. I know it sounds insane, but I swear I heard someone tapping from underneath. Her voice cracked. I thought maybe it was a swimmer. But then the kayak shifted. The feed distorted slightly. A blur. The camera caught a momentary shape just beyond the fog. It looked like a person, standing, waist deep, facing away. Emily didn't see it. She kept talking. "I don't think I'm alone out here." Then the screen went black. End of video 1. I didn't move, didn't speak. Sam was already shaking his head. "I don't like this," he whispered. "We shouldn't be watching these." I played the next video. This time she was on land. I could tell by the crunch of pine needles underfoot. Her breathing was erratic. "I got out of the boat," she whispered. "It followed me. There was someone in the lake." Her headlamp caught trees, the edge of the canoe dock. Then movement. Behind her, just beyond the flashlight's reach, a flicker. A figure. Barefoot, wet, motionless. Emily didn't turn. The figure stood for 3 seconds, then walked, no drifted behind the trees. The audio crackled. A voice, not hers. A deep gurgling tone, like someone speaking underwater. It said her name, but not the way we say names. This was stretched unnatural. A name remembered by something that doesn't understand language anymore. She dropped the camera. The video ended with spinning leaves and the sound of footsteps rushing away. The third video began with silence. The screen was dark. No movement. Just the faint click of the camera being set down somewhere. Then Emily's voice, barely above a whisper. I found something in the woods. I don't know if it's real. A pause. Breathing. I followed the trail past the cabins. I don't know how far, but there's a circle made of bones. Clean. Arranged. Something's been placing them. She sounded smaller now. Not afraid in the usual way. More like someone who knew she wouldn't be believed. I think the thing that followed me from the lake. It's not from here. Another silence. Then the sound of something wet being dragged through leaves. The camera didn't move. But in the distance, something did. A shape passed between trees. Too tall, too smooth. It didn't walk, it glided. Emily didn't scream. She just said in the calmest voice imaginable, "It's getting closer." The video cut. By now Sam was shaking. He backed away from the table. I don't want to see the rest. We should have never touched this. I couldn't stop. Something about her voice, her fear, it felt unfinished. Like she needed someone to listen, even if it was too late to save her. I opened the fourth video. It was indoors, a cabin, but the walls weren't right, too wide, too many windows. The angles looked wrong, like a room stretched in the middle. Her headlamp beam spun wildly. "There's no door anymore," she said. "I came back to camp." But it isn't camp. She pointed the camera at the wall. Scratches everywhere, deep gouges running floor to ceiling. Not animal marks, not tools, just jagged trembling scrapes, as if something had been digging outward. A loud knock 3 times. Off screen, Emily gasped. "It knows I'm recording." She moved toward a small window. On the other side stood a figure, not moving, not blinking. It looked like her own face, staring back, smiling, but only the mouth moved. The rest of the face completely still. She whispered, "It's learning how to be me." The screen went black. I sat in total silence. The air in the shed felt wrong now. Too still. Sam wouldn't even look at the phone. He was muttering to himself, pacing. I had to finish. I had to know what happened. Video 5. No introduction. Emily was in the lake, not in a boat, not on the shore. She was waist-deep water, swirling black around her. Her lips were blue, her hands shivering. "I tried to leave," she said, teeth chattering. "I walked for hours, but it all leads back here." She pointed the camera across the lake. The fog hung heavy, but shapes moved within it, circling. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's many pieces of people left behind. The water rippled beside her. She turned. A face surfaced. Not hers, not human. Eyes wide, mouth open but no scream. Just rows and rows of teeth. And then nothing. Just her breath and silence. The video ended. I didn't want to watch the last one, but I did. It opened to her face. Close. Her eyes red. Skin pale. "This is my last one," she said. "It told me. It needs someone to take my place." A pause. Then she looked directly into the camera. "Don't let it choose you." Behind her, a shape began to rise. Tall, elongated, wearing something like a counselor's shirt, soaked, shredded, as if it had worn her for a while. Then the video glitched. A final burst of static, and it was over. We didn't sleep that night. We buried the phone beneath the shed, poured salt over it, covered it with stone. The next day, Sam quit, packed up and left. I stayed, not because I'm brave, because I think it knows me now. I hear the lake calling at night. Sometimes the fog creeps closer than it should. Sometimes I hear someone knocking under the dock. I never answer. I just sit in silence and wait for my turn. The lake doesn't shimmer anymore. It pulses. Each morning the mist sits heavier, longer. The campers say it smells like pennies again. The lifeguards joke that fish are spawning weird this year. But I've seen things they haven't. I've seen the girl who doesn't show up on the rosters. Always alone, hair wet, staring out at the middle of the lake like she's remembering something she shouldn't. I've seen the fog form words on the water. Brief, broken letters, H-E-L, then ripple away. I don't speak of the phone. I don't tell the new counselors. They wouldn't believe me. They'd think it was a prank. Or worse, a story to scare the kids. Yeah. But it's not a story. It's a system. Something down there wants to be remembered. And it uses us faces, voices, bodies to keep itself alive. Some nights I still hear her voice. Not from the videos. From the water. Calling my name. Last night the fog rolled in thick and fast. No moon. No stars. Just a wall of gray. And the sound of something brushing the dock softly. Like fingers dragging across rotting wood. I stepped out with a flashlight. Shined it across the lake. Nothing. Until I saw the reflection. Not mine, but hers. Emily, standing in the shallows. Mouth closed. Eyes wide. Except she wasn't wet. She was hollow. Like something wearing her. And behind her dozens more. Shapes. Campers. Counselors. Half-seen faces rippling beneath the surface like oil. One of them lifted its hand and waved. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know how long I can resist the voice calling me. But I've started dreaming of water, of sinking, of floating weightless, watching from below. As someone else, someone with my face walks the dock at sunrise. I'm leaving this recording behind because someone needs to know. If you find a phone in the lake, don't turn it on. Don't open the folder. Don't watch the videos. And above all, don't listen if it says your name. Even now, when the wind ripples across the still water, you might hear her whisper your name. Story 3. There's a bell you're not supposed to ring. Someone rang it. They told us the bell was just decorative, hung on a crooked wooden frame in the clearing behind the mess hall. Rusted green iron cracked with time, the clapper missing, at least. That's what they wanted us to think. Counselors always glossed over it during orientation. That old thing been there since the 50s. Doesn't work anymore. Then they moved us along. But we knew. Kids talk. Rumors spread. The kind that come in whispers after lights out. Every summer someone asked about it. And every summer the staff shut it down. Fast, too fast. They said it was just superstition. But they never looked at it directly. Never walked within 10 feet. Never let the fog reach it. The rule was simple. Don't ring the bell. Because if you do, something rings back. It happened during my final summer at Camp Grayson. I was 17. Too old to be a camper. Too young to be a counselor. They made me a junior assistant. A glorified babysitter. That year the forest was different. The air heavier. Like the whole camp was holding its breath. Animals kept clear of the woods. Birds stopped singing after sundown. And the lake, usually glassy and calm, shivered constantly, even without wind. The bell stood at the edge of it all. Always just in sight from the back cabins. Always silent. Until the night someone rang it. We still don't know who. But I remember the sound. It started as a hum. Deep, low, barely audible. I was sitting in cabin G, writing in my journal, when the floor beneath me vibrated slightly. Just a pulse, like a plucked wire. Then the sound grew, not loud exactly, but heavy, like it was pressing through the air from every direction. My pen stopped moving. A sudden cold swept through the room, the kind that doesn't come from temperature, but memory. Old and wet, I stood. My bunkmates had frozen to heads tilted, ears cocked. We all heard it. The bell, 3 slow rings, metal on metal echoing across the tree line, like it had waited decades to be touched again. Someone whispered, "Who the hell?" But they didn't finish, because the sound didn't stop. It reverberated. It kept going long after the 3rd toll faded. Not as a tone, but as something alive. It felt like it had entered the dirt beneath us. Burrowing, spreading. Outside the forest went dead silent. And then came the knock. 1, 2, 3. Not on the door, under the cabin. None of us slept that night. Counselors said it was wind or some animal bumping against the floorboards. But we knew better. The next day, one of the kids, Lena, 12 years old, was gone. Not missing, not run off, just gone. Her bed was still made, her shoes neatly placed at the foot, her name tag on the hook, but she was nowhere. Not on the lake, not in the woods, not on the cameras. They called her parents, they called the police, but there was no search party, no flyers, nothing official. The camp shut down for 24 hours. We stayed in the cabins confused. No answers, just rain. And that night, the bell rang again. After the second ringing, things got worse. The counselors wouldn't admit it, but they were scared. Their smiles were stretched thin, their voices too bright. They added curfews, cancelled night hikes, kept us inside once the sun dropped past the pines. But something had already gotten in. The third night, a boy named Carter, quiet, bookish, never caused trouble, started screaming in his sleep. Not nightmares, not talking, screaming. He thrashed against his sheets, eyes open, voice hoarse. It took 2 counselors to hold him down. When they asked what he saw, he kept repeating, "It knows my name." Then he bit through his own tongue. They sent him home in the morning. No one ever mentioned him again. But that night, something else happened. Around 2:00 a.m., I woke to a noise like something brushing against the window screen. I sat up slowly. The bunk above me creaked. My breath caught in my throat. I saw the silhouette outside the cabin. Thin, tall, unmoving. It was facing the bell. Its arms were too long. Its head tilted slowly toward me, then away. And then the bell rang again. One slow, agonizing chime. The next morning, another kid was gone. Maya. 14, smart, sharp-tongued. Her sleeping bag was zipped perfectly, but her bed was cold. Her flashlight was found at the edge of the woods, pointing toward the bell. After that, the air around camp changed. Birds stopped nesting in the trees. Insects vanished, and something started knocking. Not randomly, not loudly. It knocked under the beds 3 times, always at 3:13 a.m. Exactly. We timed it. And that's when I realized it wasn't just taking campers. It was learning us. Each ring came with a price, and the more it rang, the closer it got. Not just to the cabins, to our minds. I started hearing it when I was alone. The hum, the low resonant buzz of metal on metal vibrating through bone. It would come up through the soles of my shoes, settle in my spine. One day I looked in the mirror, and for a split second my reflection didn't move. It just stared and smiled. I started to remember things I hadn't done. I remembered standing by the bell. I remembered touching it. I remembered ringing it. But I hadn't. Had I? That's when I understood. It wasn't just a warning. It was a summon. The bell was a signal. And now, something was answering. The counselors tried to act like everything was fine. More lights, more songs, more distractions. But no one was laughing anymore. Kids whispered in corners. Some refused to sleep. A few tried to sneak away in the night. None made it past the tree line, because the bell rang again every time someone got too close to leaving. It wasn't just marking time, it was watching. It rang the way a hunter licks its lips before the final move. I stopped eating, stopped speaking. I barely recognized myself in the mirror when it did reflect me. Sometimes the mirror was empty. One morning I woke with dirt under my fingernails, my shoes soaked. I didn't remember leaving the cabin, but I remembered the dream. I was standing in front of the bell, alone, and it asked me to ring it again. Only it wasn't a voice, it was a feeling, a hunger. It wanted to be heard. By the 6th day, half the camp was gone. No announcements, just empty bunks, empty beds, and smiles that weren't quite right on the remaining staff. Something had taken them, replaced them, and still no one would talk about the bell until Daniel cracked. He was one of the senior staff, always serious, always quiet. One night during dinner, he stood on the table and screamed, "It's not a bell, it's a mouth." He kept screaming it over and over. They feed it names. That's how it eats through memory. You don't disappear, you're erased. 2 counselors dragged him out. We never saw him again. That night, I found something under my bed. A note, folded 4 times. No name, no handwriting, just a sentence. It remembers you now. That was when the knocking stopped, because it didn't need to knock anymore. It was inside. I tried to run the next morning, through the trees, toward the road, but the forest bent the wrong way. Trails curved back into themselves. My compass spun like a toy. At one point, I found a clearing where the trees had grown in a perfect circle, dead silent. And at the center, the bell, still, untouched, and yet ringing in my head. Not the sound, but the shape of it. The anticipation, the aftermath. Like it had left a residue in my bones. And then it spoke, not in words, but in absence. My name was gone. I couldn't remember it, couldn't say it. When I tried, it came out as static. That night I stood outside my cabin, fog rising, mouth dry. And I knew if I didn't ring the bell, someone else would. Someone already had. And now it needed the final note. It needed my voice. I don't know how I got to the clearing. One moment I was lying in my bunk, trembling in silence, staring at the ceiling where the wood warped in strange pulsating knots. The next, I was standing in front of the bell. The fog was thicker here. It clung to the trees like wet flesh. The sky was black, not with night, but with something heavier, something suffocating. And the bell, God, the bell, it looked different now. No longer rusted, no longer cracked. It was whole, waiting. The clapper had returned, hanging like a tongue slick and eager. I reached for it, not because I wanted to, because I had no choice. My hand wasn't mine. My breath wasn't mine. My body was just a vessel, one of many. And the bell knew. When I touched it, it vibrated beneath my skin. The sound didn't ring out into the air. It rang inward. It rang through memory. And I remembered everything. Everyone who'd been taken. Lena, Carter, Maya, Daniel, even the ones before my time faces. I'd never seen, names I never learned. They weren't gone. They were inside it, trapped in the echo, their thoughts still whispering, their screams looped in endless tolls. The bell didn't take bodies. It took presence, removed you from the world like an erased line of text, smoothed over, rewritten. No one would mourn you because no one would remember you ever existed. I pulled my hand back. The bell did not ring. Not yet. It was waiting for permission. And in that moment, I did something I still don't understand. I leaned forward and whispered my name. Just once. Soft. Final. And then the bell rang. I woke up the next morning in the field behind the mess hall. It was quiet. Warm. Normal. The bell was gone. So were the missing campers. So was the memory of them. I walked into the dining hall. The counselors smiled. The kids played cards. No one remembered Lena, or Carter, or Maya. They didn't remember me either. I was just the new guy, someone who arrived late. No paperwork, no background. Just here, now, floating in the space where a person should be. I still walk past the place where the bell once stood. There's no clearing anymore, just trees and silence. But sometimes I feel it. A low hum in the soles of my feet. A shape in my thoughts that doesn't belong. It's still there, waiting, not for someone to ring it, but for someone to listen. Because now it knows how to call you by name. Even now, if you hear something ringing in the fog, if you feel your name trembling behind your teeth, don't answer, don't turn, don't remember, because it's not a bell anymore. It's you. Story 4. We played hide and seek and found someone who wasn't playing. It started on a dare. Everything awful in childhood usually does. We were 12 restless, sweaty drunk on the false freedom of summer camp. It was the 3rd week at Ridgepoint, and someone, maybe Danny, had the bright idea to play hide and seek after lights out. The counselors were asleep. The woods beyond the cabins were damp with fog. The rules were simple. No flashlights, no cabins, no backing out. First to be found would be it the next night. Last one hiding wins. The winner always got to ask the loser a question, any question, and they had to answer it. It was stupid. It was perfect. It was the kind of thing that felt ancient when you were in it, like we were part of some rite older than we knew. We had no idea how old it really was. There were 7 of us that night. We counted down in whispers behind cabin F, the ground soft with pine needles, the smell of lake water thick in the air. I remember the sound of my breath, shallow and fast, like my body already knew something was wrong. Danny volunteered to seek. We scattered. I ran west deeper into the trees, my sneakers silent against the soil. I crouched low behind a rotted-out canoe someone had tossed by the edge of the fence that marked the camp's border. I could see nothing, but I could feel everything. Every tree, every heartbeat, every breath not mine. And after a minute, I realized the woods had gone quiet. Too quiet, even the bugs, like something had stepped into the forest and told it to hush. I crouched there for 10 minutes, maybe longer. Then I heard the first scream, not loud, not panicked, just sharp, cut off, then nothing. When I finally emerged from my hiding spot, I found 2 others, Mariah and Benny. They were pale eyes, wide, not speaking. "Did you hear that?" I asked. They didn't answer. Benny was staring into the woods. We waited. No one else came back. We waited longer. Still nothing. Eventually, we whispered our way to the dining hall, crept through the back entrance, and waited for morning. None of us spoke. Not really. When the sun rose, we went back to the cabins. Danny's bed was empty. So were the others. We told the counselors they'd snuck off, that maybe they were pulling a prank. We didn't say what we really thought because we didn't know how to say it. How do you explain that something ancient just absorbed your friends? That the forest felt different afterward, like the trees were listening? That every reflection in the lake looked slightly off? They didn't find the bodies. They didn't even find footprints. But we knew. We knew they'd been found. Not by us. Not by Danny. But by something else. Something that didn't care about the rules of our game. Something that had been hiding long before we ever came looking. The next night, no one said the word hide, but it hung in the air, tight, unspoken, like a rope around our necks. Camp went on. Songs by the fire, canoe drills, arts and crafts. But everything felt rehearsed, like we were actors repeating scenes from a story that had already ended. Only 3 of us knew the truth. Me, Mariah, Benny, and none of us could stop thinking about the missing. About how their names weren't even spoken by the counselors. Not even once. That night, I couldn't sleep. I heard a knock. 3 soft taps on the outside wall of the cabin, low by the ground. Too low for a person. I stayed in bed. The knock came again. This time, it moved, sliding along the wall like fingers dragging in the dirt. I pulled the blanket over my face. Then I heard the whisper. My name. Once, drawn out. Slow, as if someone was trying to remember how it sounded. The next morning, Benny was gone, his bed perfectly made, shoes still lined up, socks folded. No one mentioned it. Not the campers, not the staff. But I noticed something in the dining hall. On the wall behind the juice station, where the camp motto was painted, "We find ourselves in nature." Someone had scratched a single word beneath it. Not big, not angry. Just carved in slow, deep strokes. Seek. Mariah found me behind the mess hall after lunch. Her eyes were bloodshot. She said she heard her name the night before. That something crawled under her bunk. That it whispered, "Count with me." She hadn't slept since. "I think it wants us to play again," she said. I didn't answer, but I felt it too. The pressure, the watchfulness, the invitation. That night I broke. I walked to the edge of the woods. Same spot where we started the game. The trees were wrong now, bent slightly inward like they were listening. And at their base, shoes, 4 pairs, neatly placed, as if the kids who wore them had just stepped out and never came back. Something moved deeper in the trees. A shuffle, a breath, then a voice. Not loud, not close, but unmistakable. Ready or not, it was Danny's voice. But it was wrong. Too wet, too hollow. Too empty. I ran. I didn't sleep again. Not the next night. Not the one after. I watched the shadows, counted the minutes. traced the faces of missing friends in the grain of the cabin walls. Mariah stopped talking. She wouldn't look anyone in the eyes, just sat on the dock feet in the water, whispering numbers, counting over and over, sometimes forward, sometimes backward, and sometimes not in English. I asked her once, "What are you counting for?" She said, "For it." I asked her what it was. She looked at me and smiled. But it wasn't her smile. It didn't belong on her face. The next day, they held a camp-wide game, hide and seek, announced like it was fun. A throwback. Classic camp day. All campers required to play. Mandatory. I felt cold when I heard it. The staff were too cheerful. Their smiles too sharp. As if they didn't know what they were setting loose, or maybe they did. Each group was assigned a seeker. I was assigned to seek. I tried to refuse, said I was sick. They didn't listen. They pushed me toward the tree line, handed me a flashlight, said, "You'll be fine." But the flashlight didn't work, and the trees welcomed me like an old friend. I stood at the edge of the woods, alone. The countdown began in my head, even though no one said it aloud. 10, 9, 8. My breath grew thick. 7, 6. I stepped into the dark. 5, 4. The forest swallowed the light. 3, 2. The trees whispered something in a voice I almost recognized. 1. Ready or not. They weren't hiding. Not really. They were waiting. The kids. The counselors. The ones who had vanished. They weren't gone. They were folded into the bark. The soil. The game. I saw them in flashes, faces behind trees, fingers curled in roots, eyes blinking from shadows that moved wrong. Everywhere I looked, someone used to be, but not anymore. And then I saw her, Mariah, standing by the old canoe where I had hidden that first night. She was humming, but not to herself, to something behind her, something impossibly tall, draped in darkness. Its head was too high, its arms too wide. It turned toward me, and I understood. It didn't play the game. It was the game. I ran, not away, but through roots that writhed underfoot, through branches that bent aside like curtains pulled by unseen hands. The forest didn't fight me. It let me in, because it knew I was part of it now. The more I searched, the more I forgot why I started. The names of the others blurred, my memories blurred. My thoughts weren't just mine anymore. Something whispered between them, something old. I found a clearing, wide, dead, silent. At the center, a circle of footprints, child-sized, counselor-sized mine. All around me, voices counted, soft, unified. 1, 2, 3, but not upward. They were counting down, from 10. And in the center of the clearing, a shape, tall, thin. It had no face, only a smooth blank, where a head should be. But I recognized it, because I'd felt it all along. It had never been hiding. It had always been seeking. And now it had found me. I tried to speak, but no sound came. I tried to run, but my legs no longer moved like legs. I felt myself stretching inward, dimming, being filed away, like a thought half-formed, a word unspoken. And as the thing reached for me, I heard a voice, my own voice, counting backwards, not aloud, in my head, like I was still playing, still seeking, still trying to remember the rules. I don't remember how I got back. Maybe I didn't. Maybe the part of me telling this story is just what's left over. But I know this. Camp ended early. The directors said there'd been a plumbing issue, sickness in the water. Parents picked up their kids. Some didn't notice their own looked different, taller, quieter, not blinking quite right. And at the edge of the woods behind the mess hall, someone left a note pinned to the trees, scrawled in pencil, barely legible. We played hide and seek and found someone who wasn't playing. I've moved far from that place. I keep the lights on now. I don't go near forests, and I never count out loud. But sometimes when I pass playgrounds after dark, or see a group of kids whispering under the stars, I hear it. That soft, impossible voice, ready or not. And I know the game never ends. It just waits for someone new, someone curious, someone who thinks it's just a story. But if you hear the voice, if you feel the urge to count, to hide, to seek, don't play, don't follow, Don't look in the shadows behind the trees, because whatever it is, it's still playing. And this time, it might be your turn to count. Story 5, there's a whistle code at this camp. We heard one that wasn't listed. They taught us the code on day 1. 3 short blasts meant fire. 1 long blast meant lost camper. 2 shorts and 1 long meant lockdown. No questions asked. Simple, efficient, ancient, almost like it predated phones and radios and human instinct itself. You hear the whistle, you move. That was the rule. No one ever asked what would happen if we heard something else. No one ever wondered what a 4th code might mean. Not until it blew through the woods that night. Not until it came from somewhere no one should have been. Not until we realized the whistle wasn't calling us to safety. It was calling something else. Camp Granger wasn't haunted. At least not in the way people like to think. No old murders. No cursed lake. No abandoned mines. Just forest. Deep, endless forest. And the quiet kind of tradition that lets things hide for decades. I was 16. A junior counselor. Half in charge, half ignored. The real staff wore red lanyards. I wore yellow. That meant I got to take out trash, calm homesick kids, and on week 2 learn the whistle code. Our head counselor, Jonah, ran us through drills with military precision. If you hear a whistle, he said, drop what you're doing and listen. This isn't a joke. You move when it says move. Then he leaned in, eyes colder than they had any right to be. And if you ever hear a code, you weren't taught, you didn't hear it. We laughed. He didn't. I should have listened more carefully, especially when the first kid went missing. His name was Nolan, 9 years old, small for his age. Always wore this green frog hoodie even when it was 90 degrees out. He vanished during rest hour. 1 second he was in his bunk playing cards. Next gone. No screams, no noise, just absence. We searched the whole camp. Canoe docks, mess hall, arts cabin, the trails into the woods. Nothing. Then just after dusk, the whistle blew. 3 short blasts. We scrambled. Fire drill. I remember grabbing the emergency pack, sprinting toward the clearing. But as we all gathered, Emma grabbed my arm. She looked pale. I thought it was 4, she said. 4 what? 4 whistles. I laughed. That's not a thing. She didn't laugh back. I'm telling you, I heard 4. That night, Nolan's bunk was empty. But his frog hoodie was folded on the pillow. I swear I didn't fold it. And no one else would admit to it either. I should have left then. But I didn't. Because the forest hadn't finished counting yet. The next night, we heard it again. 4 blasts. Short. Precise. Echoing through the trees like teeth snapping shut. I was walking the trail behind the craft shed, checking lanterns. At first, I thought my memory was off. Maybe I only counted 3. But something in my stomach twisted, like my body knew before my mind could. 4. Not 3, not any of the listed codes. I froze, waited for radios to crackle, for staff to sprint, for protocol. But nothing happened. No one moved, like no one else had heard it. Or worse, like they were pretending not to. That same night, another camper went missing. Tasha, 11, quiet, kind. The kind of kid who volunteers to clean paintbrushes. Her flashlight was found near the bell tower, still on, but no footprints around it. No sign she ever stood there. It was as if the forest just unzipped and swallowed her. The staff blamed a runaway scenario, said she was struggling, homesick, but her bunk was made, and her shoes were still inside the cabin. That's when I started to notice the map. The camp map, every cabin had one, but mine had changed. At the bottom corner near the legend, a new mark had appeared. Small, barely inked. A red X where the woods met the northern fence. It wasn't there before. And when I showed it to Emma, her hands shook. That's where I heard it, she whispered. The 4 whistles. I asked Jonah about it. Cornered him outside the mess hall. He didn't flinch, just looked me dead in the eye and said, "We don't talk about the 4th code." His voice was quiet, barely above the hum of cicadas. I asked him what it meant. He didn't answer, just whispered, "Don't go near the X." Then walked away. 2 nights later, we heard the whistle again. But this time it wasn't from the bell tower. It came from inside the woods, from the wrong direction. And I swear on my life, it wasn't blown by a person. The pitch was off, too low, too slow, like something was mimicking the sound, trying to get it just right, trying to speak in our language. That's when I understood. The fourth code isn't a warning, it's an invitation, and someone or something has started answering. We waited until after lights out. Emma and I. We didn't tell anyone. Not because we didn't want to, but because we knew what would happen if we did. They'd pretend not to hear us, just like they pretended not to hear the whistle. We brought one flashlight low beam, one compass from the camp emergency kit, and the map with the red X circled in pencil. The forest swallowed us fast. Noise faded. Even the frogs stopped calling. And with every step toward the X, it felt less like we were moving forward, more like the woods were tightening around us. It took 20 minutes to reach it. The air changed first. Heavy, metallic, like copper pennies pressed to the tongue. Then the trees, they bent toward us. Not a metaphor, not imagination. Bent, curved at the trunk, like they were listening. And in the clearing ahead, we saw it. Not a cave, not a grave. A circle, 10 feet wide, marked with smooth, shallow lines in the dirt. Not dug, etched. Inside the circle, pine needles, a pile of rocks, and a whistle. Old, blackened, metal cracked like burnt bone. No footprints, no wind. Emma stepped forward. I grabbed her wrist. No, I said. But she was looking at the whistle, not at me, like it was calling only her. Then we heard it again. 4 blasts. But this time, they came from behind us. Closer than ever. Right at the edge of the clearing. We turned. No one was there. But something had moved. The trees rippled, and the circle began to hum. A low vibration barely audible but deep in the bones, like an engine turning over beneath the earth. Then the rocks in the center shifted, slowly, deliberately, not falling, rearranging themselves. And the whistle let out one final faint tone. 5. One more than before. And Emma whispered, "It's learning." We ran. Didn't stop. Didn't look back. Didn't speak until we were back at camp. And when we returned, something was wrong. Everyone was awake. All the campers standing in the field, silently. No lights, no staff, just kids, barefoot, eyes open, staring at the trees. And then all at once, they started walking, straight toward the woods, toward the X. I remember the first time I fully noticed them, not as campers, not as kids, but as something else entirely. They moved like puppets, limbs loose, chins tilted upward toward the tree line, eyes unfocused, faces blank. Emma and I sprinted past bunks and mess hall, past cabins locked for curfew. No one stopped us. No one shouted, because all the staff were frozen too. At the edge of the field, just before the forest border, I grabbed Emma's hand. She didn't stop. The group kept walking, towards the circle. Behind us, the whistle called again. 5 blasts this time. Slow, resonant. Not shrilly alarm, more like a summons. A knowing. The woods leaned inward. Birds took flight in slow motion, dragging shadows through the fog. And I thought of Nolan, Tasha, Daniel, all the missing ones, all the fallen into silence. They were still here, but not alive. The line of children passed me and Emma without seeing us. We were invisible. They crossed into the ring barefoot. Some of them carried stones. Some held bracelets that weren't theirs. They stepped into the circle, and at the center, the whistle lay untouched, until Emma bent down. Her fingers closed around the blackened metal. She raised it like a ritual. The wind quieted. The earth hummed, and she brought it to her lips. Blew. One short blast, then another, then a long, and it was done. Everything stopped. The group froze in the clearing. The breeze held its breath. The world ended until a ripple moved across the circle. Then another, a deeper vibration. From beneath, from within, the whistle in Emma's hand cracked, then shattered. A sound like bones snapping, glass shattering, and then silence. They turned, all of them, empty mouths parted, not speaking, just mouths and eyes, hundreds of them, and their gaze found why, and did not break. I stumbled away, pulled Emma with me, ran. The whistle exploded behind us, a sound I couldn't even describe. A long guttural note. Broken. A laugh made audible. Something coming through every tunnel in the forest. I woke up days later, in the infirmary, alone. No campers. No Emma. No Nolan. No Tasha. No staff. Everything erased, except the whistle, resting on the pillow next to me. Blackened. Cracked. Cold. The camp was closed immediately. Rumors said heat exhaustion. Stress. No bodies. No police reports. No parents were called. The whistle disappeared that same day. So did I. I'm telling this from somewhere safe. Barely. Even after the cabins rot and the trails grow over, something always lingers. A name on the roster that wasn't there. A whisper in the tent when no one's awake. A whistle faint and wrong, because the woods don't forget, and neither do the things that still call them home. Even now, if you listen closely, you might hear it whisper your name. If you crave more true ghost stories, subscribe to True Ghost Vault now.